Welcome to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership, where you'll hear insights and useful strategies, as well as lessons learned from other nonprofit leaders and valuable tips from a variety of experts. Here to help you with the challenges and opportunities you face day after day is your host and nonprofit leadership expert, Sarah Olivieri.
Welcome, nonprofit leaders. Today, we are going to be talking about meeting your fundraising goals and how to actually make that happen without tearing your hair out. I am Sarah Olivieri. I am creator of the Impact Method, best-selling author, trainer, coach, consultant to nonprofits, former executive director, board member, secret toilet fixer, conference coordinator, as well as founder of multiple for profit businesses. And I have been in many of your shoes and traveled the journey alongside many of you nonprofit leaders as I have coached and guided you through numerous challenges and growth focused items, including the fundraising conundrum. So let's dive in. Stick with me for the next few minutes, and I am going to demystify fundraising for you and how to really get a grip on it so you can meet your fundraising goals. And in case I don't go deep enough for you, I give a full 1 hour training on this. You can go to that by going to pivotground.com/fundraising dash secrets. I'll make sure I put the link in the show notes. But let's dive into the basic issues going on here and why it can feel so hard to get your nonprofit fully funded. So, here are the three reasons why I see nonprofits falling short when it comes to meeting their fundraising goals. Reason number one is that nonprofits often focus on the wrong fundraising activity for where they are at in the process of growing their fundraising capacity. So, when we think about the different types of fundraising there are out there, lots of people think about grants, people think about events, which can be usually events have something to do with donors, although they seem to create their own category by themselves somehow. There's you might have heard major donors, there's sponsorships, there's digital fundraising and marketing, peer based fundraising. So let me give you kind of the big categories that I want you to think about. And they're really about the nature of the relationships and the nature of the work that you have to do. So there are grants, which are about having relationships with foundations and applications and sometimes restricted revenue. There are what a lot of people call major donors, as like to call high touch donor based fundraising. So these are going to be people who are giving larger amounts, smaller group of people who are going to be very high touch with and build those relationships. There's a whole set of systems and processes around setting this up and doing this right. There is what I call scaled donor based fundraising, means you're still going to build relationships, but you're going to do it in the hundreds and thousands of people rather than like tens and hundreds of people like you would with your high touch major donor relationships. And that involves a lot more tech and modern marketing, scaled marketing techniques, email marketing, social media fundraising, things like that. We have planned giving, which is about people giving their assets after they pass away. There's some technical things around that. So that's kind of like its own little bubble. And we have sponsorships as well. And that's about getting businesses and corporations to give you their money, kind of really different set of processes and a different motivation, very relational, just like those high touch donor relationships, but its own kind of thing in its own. And I encourage you to think about each of these activities that I've mentioned as its own type of fundraising business. So, where do you need to focus? You need to focus your energy on building out and streamlining each one of these types of businesses one at a time. And which order do you do them in? Well, you do the highest return on investment type activities first. For most organizations, that is going to be your high touch donor relationship fundraising. That's going to bring you the most income per amount of effort and money you spend, and it's sustainable over time. Okay, so the second mistake that nonprofits make and causes them to fall short of their fundraising goals is they diversify too soon, right? So if we've got these categories of different fundraising businesses that you can be in, and you can start them all at your nonprofit, but please don't start them all too soon. I want you to think about really securing a major chunk of your fundraising from one category and get that all streamlined and operating well before you add in another business. And again, I'd like you to build them in order of highest return on investment. You want the complete order, come to the training on Thursday. I am going to make the training probably available in some sort of recorded format too. So if you're watching this after I've gone live and the live training is passed, just reach out or go to pivotground.com and we can get you sorted. So, diversification in the long run is good. But if you're little, if your operating budget is under a million, I want you to really have one primary source that you've gotten really, really good at. And certainly, if you're in the $250,000 range, one and only one of these fundraising businesses until you've really got that humming along nicely, are covering most of your expenses from it, and then you can build in your next type. Okay, the third reason that I see nonprofits falling short of their fundraising goals is they just simply don't invest enough time, money, and staff to building that fundraising business. This is a whole chunk of your organization. You just like you have your everything dedicated to programming, you need to have a whole part of your nonprofit business that is dedicated to fundraising, to development, as it's often called in the nonprofit space. So, some organizations have kind of relegated funding to something that the board is just going to take care of. They're not going to take care of it. Board members might help you achieve a fundraising strategy that your whole fundraising function or department has created and built the assets for, but your board is not just going to magically do all your fundraising and just hand over the money to you. That's just not going to happen. It's not realistic to ask that of them, and it's probably going to create weird dynamics. We can go into that deeper on another day. So, you really, really, really need to not underestimate the amount of effort, time, and energy that goes into fundraising well. One number that you could potentially think about if you want to kind of gauge where you're at is fundraising done well can generally takes 25 cents to raise a dollar. So if you want to raise $100, you better be spending $25 on fundraising, right? So you can do the math. If you want to raise $1 million, let's see, you'll need to be spending at least $250,000 on bringing in that $1 million, right? But that's once you're good at it, right? So it's going to cost you more initially, and you should figure out what your own cost to raise a dollar is and then track how much it scales up. But just I wanted to give you a few numbers in there. And actually, for profit businesses, when they're trying to grow their revenue, they tend to invest roughly 35% of their entire budget is going towards the activities that bring in revenue for their organization. So you also want to kind of benchmark it against the for-profit industry. You can do it that way. Now, I didn't include any specific stuff about grants, but I just have to say it because so many nonprofits go after grants first when really you should be going after grants last, and if at all. Grants are good for certain boosts in things, but grants are really like the icing on the cake. And first, you have to build the cake before you can have the icing. Another thing I'd like you to think about related to grants is roughly 75% of charitable dollars given to nonprofits in this country comes from individual donations. Those are donations that could be coming through the scaled relationship fundraising, or those donations that could be coming in through the high touch donor based fundraising. And only 25% comes from the rest. So corporate sponsorship and grants lumped together. Oh, and the third category that would count towards individual would be that planned giving. So those three things are where 75%, I would say, ideally, your nonprofit probably shouldn't be too far off from mirroring the total money available. So I want you to be thinking about that even once you have dialed in your funding from individual donors. That last 25% is going to be potentially coming from grants and sponsorships. If at all, you may not even need it if you do your donor based fundraising well. All right. That's all I have for you today, but I want to touch on how important it is that you stay focused. You've got to pick which activity is going to be the highest return on investment for your organization, and then you've got to stick with it. People are going to come by and they're going to say, your board members might come by, why don't you do this? Why don't you throw a gala? Why don't you? And you say, because right now we're focused on this one thing until we get to this amazing point with it and it is dialed in and streamlined and we can count on it and it's just fantastic. Then we will add in our next one. So it's not that you're never going to do it or not going to do the thing you're suggesting, but you're not going to do it now, because if you do, you will overload your plate, you will water down your efforts, and guess what? You won't meet your fundraising goals. If you want to be in the room with me, getting support and guidance on meeting your funding goals, as well as your other leadership goals, organizational goals for your nonprofit, I would invite you to apply for the Thrive program, where I work with a small group of clients to support them through their whatever stage of growth they are in. And you can access that by going to pivotground.com/application. It's my pleasure to be with you, and I will see you next week. Bye.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.